That's great. But we want to get you to the program. My name is Esther Northman, and I'm honored to serve as the president of the Hebrew Congregation of Chautauqua. And we're so glad that you decided to join us tonight. It's my pleasure to welcome you to the fourth Shirley Lazarus Sunday Evenings Together. What we do matters. And I'm delighted to see so many familiar faces, and I think I see some new faces. Raise your hand, please, if this is your first time at a Shirley Lazarus. Oh, wow, that's great. Welcome. We hope that you'll come back for our other Shirley Lazarus Speakers series, and I just want to give you a little pre-op of what's coming next week. We have cantors Jody Suffren and Roy Einord, who are going to speak on, they're doing a presentation on Songs Make History and History Makes Songs. And there'll be an opportunity to sing along, and it's from Irving Berlin to Leonard Bernstein. They were here last year and did a program on folk songs. How many of you were here for their program last year? Great. If you remember, did you like it? If you remember, this whole hall was full and we had overflow. So that's like unusual, really super unusual. So I hope you come and come early next week. You'll find a listing of all of the Hebrew congregation's activities, programs, services in our brochure, and you can pick up a brochure at the table by the entrance to Smith Wilkes. And we hope you'll join us at many of our services and programs. There are also envelopes on the table by the entrance, so if you feel that you'd like to give a little something to help us with our programming, that would be great. We'd appreciate it. I'm going to be sending around, or actually my new assistant here is going to be sending around clipboards, so you could add to our mailing list if you're not on it already. We would love to keep in touch with you and share what wonderful programs we'll be bringing. So she's going to send it around. So one for each quadrant here, and we look forward to keeping in touch with you now. Now to tonight's program. That's really why you came, not to hear me, I'm sure. Erroll Davis has had a long and distinguished career in business as a 13-year CEO of a global energy company. He's been in higher education and can't go much higher as Chancellor of the University System of Georgia, and also in K through 12, where he turned around the largest cheating scandal in U.S. education history at the Atlanta public school system. I hope somebody asks him more about that as we go on. Presently, Mr. Davis is president and chairman of the African American Heritage House here at Chautauqua Institution, where he and his wife, Elaine, his wife of 56 years, reside. As if he were not busy enough, effective July 1st this year, he became chair of the board of the National Academy of Engineering. It's pretty impressive. Mr. Davis holds a BS in electrical engineering from Carnegie Mellon University and an MBA in finance from the University of Chicago. So, again, very impressive. The format of tonight's program, a conversation with Erroll Davis, president of the African American Heritage House, will be that of an interview conversation between myself and Erroll Davis. I will intersperse my questions with questions from the audience. So after a few of my questions, I'll ask for people who want to ask a question. Raise your hand. And my wonderful grandson, Ben. Where's Ben? There's Ben. Will come around with a microphone so you don't have to climb up and down. Before we start our conversation, I'd like to get you thinking of topics relevant to our program. So please raise your hands if you have ever discussed issues of racism within your family. That's great. Now I hope not too many hands go up. Please raise your hands if you have ever personally experienced racism. Sorry. Please raise your hands if you have ever personally experienced anti-Semitism. Large number. Please raise your hands if you have ever personally experienced any other form of religious discrimination. And finally, please raise your hands if you have experienced any other form of discrimination besides religious. Be gender. Thank you so much for being willing to share. Now we're going to move on to tonight's program. So please join me in welcoming Erroll Davis to the Hebrew congregation. Please be sure to silence all phones and electronic devices. Switch roles.
Thank you for that warm welcome. Let me start by adding a caveat or two. Unfortunately, I have a pinched nerve in my neck, and it's affecting my speech, and so I sound too much like Joe Biden. That would be the reason. The second one is I want to thank Esther for using my high school graduation photo on the flyer as well. So with that, I'll defer to your questions.
Thank you. And think of questions that you too would like to ask him. How and why did you become interested in Chautauqua?
Well, as many of you know, I was a speaker in the AMP back when I could talk. In 2012, I spoke about the cheating scandal in the week on ethics. I spoke about the lack of ethics in the Atlanta public school system. And while I was talking, my wife was out looking around, reading through the programs, and after I finished, I was voluntold that we were coming back. We've been back ever since, and 1 week, 2 weeks, 2 weeks, then she built a house, and we opened it in 2017.
Yes. Yeah. Great. Thank you, Elaine. Could you please tell us the history of African Americans at Chautauqua?
Yes and no. That is a work in process. We have at the African American Heritage House an archivist on staff, and she is researching right now. She's got 6 linear feet of Vincent Miller papers that she's going through. At the African American Heritage House, you can see storyboards on what African Americans were doing in the first 25 years of Chautauqua, and also doing up to about 1914 is what we surfaced so far. Next year is I believe the 150th anniversary of the CLSC, and we got a lot of archival work in progress on that as well.
Great. Is the number of people of color at Chautauqua changing, would you say, recently?
That's difficult for me really to say definitively. The institution doesn't publish demographics that I know of. Visually, I think the answer is yes, and certainly yes compared to when I first came here in 2012.
What is microaggression? Is it a good or is it a bad thing? And how do you eliminate it or solve it, assuming it is a bad thing?
This is actually a difficult question. Microaggression, in many ways, is just a stupid statement or act. At least it's interpreted stupidly by people of color, based on what you think, what you understand, what you've been taught. Let me give you some examples. My wife Elaine no longer walks from Bester up Ames. And the reason is people of goodwill, very nice people, are always stopping her and asking her if she needs a ride to the parking lot. And the assumption, of course, is she doesn't belong here. It's a bad assumption, but it's as I said, I think a couple of years ago, Otis Moss used to bring this choir here, and they would sing on the weekends, and every time he brought this choir, I would be asked, was I singing tonight? And unfortunately, you do not want to hear me sing. But those are the kinds of microaggressions that people of color deal with on an ongoing basis every single day of their lives. And is it, virile or vitriolic racism? Those doing it would say no, but cumulatively, it wears on you. And so in terms of how to resolve that problem, on a macro level, the advice is easy. And that is, whenever you're encountering someone that's different than you, don't start by emphasizing the differences. Start by talking about commonalities. How are you enjoying the time here in Chautauqua? And don't put your hands in my hair. Well, I used to have hair. So the advice on the macro level is easy. On the micro level, it's a little more difficult when you're talking one-on-one and you're confronted with a microaggression. And there are a lot of variables. Do I know the person, for example? Do I have a relationship with the person? So my options are usually say nothing, try to have a teaching moment, or I'm going to put you in your place. Now, if this is the fifth microaggression of the day, I have to resist the last option. And there are pros and cons about each. If I know you well, then we'll have a teaching moment and we'll all be happy about it if I already have a relationship with you. If I don't have a relationship with you, then I have to be very careful about how I proceed through a teaching moment. If I decide to put you in your place, it makes me feel better, but it may make you feel worse. It may put you in a position where you say, I tried to be nice to those people, and they're difficult to talk with, and so I'm not going to talk to them anymore ever. And so, as you can see, the importance of relationships here. And so we suggest at the African American Heritage House, sit down, have a conversation, get to know someone, know the history, know what motivates them, know what drives them. Our view is history must be told correctly. And we've said that in Governor DeSantis. Well, but again, if you don't know someone, it's difficult to have a relationship with them. And so what we try to do is we put on programs about history. We talk about why people live in ghettos today, and that's a good Yiddish word because we've had programs on Jewish ghettos and black ghettos as well. And so again, this is a tough question. It's a tough one to answer on a micro basis, easy one to sort of gloss over on a macro basis to say, don't focus on differences.
Okay, the next one is a question that I think many people wonder about, and that is, what terminology do you prefer to describe yourself? African American, black, or a person of color?
Well, I always prefer human being. But in my 80 years of life, I've undergone a lot of evolutions here. And I started either colored or Negro, and then became black, and then African American, and then a person of color. I'm pretty much the same person. And so it really doesn't make much difference what you call me, as long as it's done respectfully.
Thank you. Ben, I think we're ready for a question from the audience. Right up here.
And Esther assures me that everyone has been checked for tomatoes and eggs.
And no speeches, please, when you ask a question.
Thank you very much, and thank you for being here with your neck and everything. This question may be a little far afield, but I wondered if you could address the type of language or images that comes from the Nation of Islam regarding Jewish people.
Yeah, I'm not at all an expert or familiar with that, so I can't begin to comment on that.
Okay, over here.
Hi there. I remember a few years ago, wasn't that long ago, there was a play put on at the Bratton Theater about gentrification and something like that. And there were black and white actors, and they went out to Mayville, I think it was, and on the way back, the car that had the black actors got stopped by the police. And that sort of was really shocking. And I wondered if there had been any work done with the community here, the permanent community here and around the Chautauqua area, to try to address that kind of thing.
I'm not really chuckling, but I may ask whether you read the paper today. There were 4 young black actors down at 3 Taps. And they were getting on the bus, and a person on the bus said, well, certainly come on board, but you have to do a dance first.
No!
Yeah. Yes. That was a day ago or 2 days ago here in Chautauqua, and the bad side of that to me was everybody on the bus laughed. And so, you know, it reemphasizes the differences and not the similarities. I don't know recently of any incidents with the police here in the area. So, but you know, microaggressions in this case, maybe macroaggressions, as I said, are a constant and they're a part of our everyday lives.
Well, let me say one positive thing. I remember in 1965 when Marian Anderson sang in the amphitheater. She was here, and it's written up in the Daily. I had talked to people here when I first visited the African American Center, and I said, you don't have any information about that. So I sent her some information, and I wonder if someone ever followed up on that and mentioned that at the African American House.
I can't remember that.
Okay, well, you can find it in the Daily, in the archives.
One more question, and then I continue.
I have to say that it's not uncommon for someone to see me walking, because I limp a little bit, and ask to drive me to the parking lot. And so how do you tell where the line is? Like, Elaine is a lot more active, probably walks better than I do, but how do you know what's meant well-intentioned? And why would you interpret that in a negative way? I like it if someone drove me to the
Yeah, well, that's an excellent question. And the reality is, I don't know anyone's intention. And the best thing to me is earbuds. Then I don't have to worry about someone's intention when I say good morning and they don't say anything back anymore. I just assume now they're listening to whatever they're listening to. Before earbuds, I used to not agonize, but wonder, well, did they hear me? Or are they racist? Or are they just in a bad mood? I can't tell. You know, if someone interrupts a person of color while they're talking, you know, I have to ask myself, is that person disrespectful, of me because of color, or are they just rude in general? And I don't know unless I know the person. And I have a lot of rude friends. I really do interrupt on an ongoing basis. But if they interrupt me and I don't know them, I just don't know. And again, as I said, if this is the 5th microaggression of the day, I may make a bad assumption. I don't know. It's wearing on you. It really is.
Thank you. What is your perspective on Black-Jewish relations, and what do you think for the future? What opportunities do you see for alliances or collaborations with the Jewish community at Chautauqua?
Well,
They're two separate questions, I guess.
yeah, let me take the latter, of course. We have programmatic collaborations with the LGBTQ plus community. I've not had any programmatic collaborations with the Hebrew community. I personally have worked with them. I miss dearly Rich Moschel, and I visit his grave every year. He was a great guy, and he helped me personally setting up the AAHH. And so, again, I certainly wouldn't resist programmatic cooperation. It just hasn't happened yet. The institution wanted us to build the AAHH house next to the Everett Center, but I objected to the creation of the ghetto up there. And so we are on 40 Scott right now. I forgot the first part.
First question was, what is your perspective on Black-Jewish relations, and what do you think, what direction will it go in the future?
That also is a tough question. You should ask easier ones. I, of course, cannot speak for all African Americans. I have concern about those relations, as does Chuck Schumer. He was taken aback by what he perceived to be deteriorating relations between blacks and Jews, but it's also an age thing, I think. I grew up in an era where Israel was an underdog, and I could see them being set upon by the whole Arab community at that time. And, you know, I followed David Ben-Gurion and Golda Meir, and, you know, Exodus was romantic. And I also understand the sacrifices that Jewish Americans have made on behalf of African Americans. I was 20 years old when Schwerner, Goodman, and Cheney were killed in Philadelphia, Mississippi. I remember that. That was done for me. If you're not allowed to study history, you don't know that. And, you know, if history makes you feel bad or badly, so be it. But again, you know, I have concerns about young people not understanding history, not understanding relationships, and how that impacts relations going forward between our communities.
Thank you. What are your suggestions for increasing the number of people of color at Chautauqua, and do you see any barriers to doing so?
Well, no one goes where they feel they're not wanted, and no one goes where there's not anything to attract. And so, again, we are not a marketing agency, but what we try to do is put on programs that are of interest. Week 9, when Marcellus will be here, the grounds will look like America. They do every time he's here. But I'd like to think that it will take more than entertainment, or that it shouldn't just take entertainment to get African Americans here. It's not a cost issue. I'm going to make that very clear. African Americans love to go to Martha's Vineyards in the summertime. It's teeming with African Americans. They're comfortable there because there are other African Americans. There are more here now, and the African American Heritage House also provides a place where people feel safe. Now I say that word safe with emphasis because it doesn't mean they're in danger physically. They're safe to be themselves, to not be judged by others, and not to be subjected to microaggressions on a daily basis. That's what safety means to them.
Then we'll take a couple more questions. This gentleman over here. Raise your hand.
Erroll, it seems like the Democratic presidential candidate might be our second black and something person in the form of Kamala Harris. Do you think that, what is your observation? I'm not asking you to speak on behalf of AAHH. I'm asking you, as somebody that was deeply involved in Georgia leadership, what do you think are the conversations that will create it if she is nominated at the convention in a few weeks?
Well, you know, the opposite party was already suggesting that, you know, Joe Biden's not going to be there, and guess what? They're going to wind up with Kamala. And so they were right there. But I don't know that she's going to get the nomination. He has endorsed her. I don't really know their processes. If it were an open primary, I can't believe from a personal perspective, I'd rather have Gretchen Whitmer from Michigan. But I tell my kids that and when Biden was still there, this is not between Biden and Trump. It's between democracy and fascism.
Yeah.
So it doesn't make me any difference who they nominate. I will never vote for the other person.
Another question?
I had a unique experience at a beach house on Fire Island many years ago, in that I was invited to a friend's party, an African-American close friend of mine, and my husband was taking care of our ill son, and I walked in and I said to Shirley, my friend, I said, wow, I'm the only white person here. Well, that started the most fantastic conversation, because there were, you know, maybe 22 to 25 people, and then there was me. And she said, now you know how we feel so often here on Fire Island and other places that we go to. And instead of it just us laughing and drinking and etc., we actually, not the whole time, but we actually had the most meaningful conversation. And of all the parties I went to on Fire Island, that stayed with me.
Thank you.
Good.
Any other questions at the moment? All the way. We'll do you after, okay?
Thank you. Appreciate your appearance here and your insights. I'm curious to know, you've administered large organizations like the school system in Atlanta. On the heels of the strangulation of George Floyd and the growth of the Me Too movement, in corporate America and in nonprofits, there's a whole move to start programs to advance diversity, equity, and inclusion, known as DEI. There's a lot of stuff that's been written and studied over the past several years, suggesting that the more that DEI programs are being implemented in corporate and nonprofit settings, the more there's a reaction against moving forward DEI. So the question is, what does one do if you want to create a more equitable society?
Well, if you want an equitable society, the first thing I say is vote. Vote at every level, particularly down the ballot, the people that have the most impact on your lives. DEI is pretty misunderstood. It is not affirmative action. And I had this view of affirmative action is that it was the greatest thing that ever happened for white males, because it gave them an excuse for their ineptitude. I managed large corporations. I never had an affirmative action officer reporting to me or in my organization, because I made it clear that we were going to have a diverse workforce, that all hiring would be from pools. No pool would be a pool unless it's a diverse pool, and I would look at your hiring record over time. I get good outcomes that way, because I found, as I looked around, people think the job of creating diversity is the chief diversity officer's job, and it is not. It is leadership's job, and it starts at the top of every corporation and every organization.
Next question.
I've been coming here for 38 years, and one of the highlights of those years, it was maybe 8 years ago, a pastor from Chicago came here and brought his choir, Otis Marsh, and they sang an anthem. The Jesus in me loves the Jesus in you. And they did not stay up on the stage. They came out, and everyone was singing it. And I naively thought, this may be a big turning point. Were any of you there on that Sunday morning? But it left the pulpit, and they came out to us. They came out to us. But we evidently took it in and then forgot about it.
Thank you.
Yeah, Otis Moss is one of the founders of the AHH.
Bringing the questions further back to Chautauqua, where do you see the African American Heritage House growing? And would your programming be increasing as it grows?
We're pretty stressed right now, quite frankly. We have an excellent program committee with a large Rolodex, and we brought in some really good speakers here. And we are now starting to share those speakers with the institution. I can't pronounce words with S's anymore. If anyone in week 2 saw Conrad Black discuss AI in the AMP, that was our speaker. We brought him here and convinced the institution to take him, and we have worked more closely with them in the past. One of the reasons we started was we wanted more diverse voices to be heard. Now they're being heard, and the main platform is increasingly diverse. And so what we're doing now is we try and interpret the theme of the week through the eyes of the marginalized. And so you have somebody talking about the economy on the main stage. At our stage, our economists will say, you've heard of the national economy, let me tell you about the economy for the marginalized. And so I suspect that as we move forward, more and more of our programming and activity will be the result of our archival work here, because we're not trying to be the largest or best African American museum in the country. That's not economically possible. But this area of the country has a rich history. There were underground railroad stops in this area, and we can start to highlight some of those things, as well as highlighting the roles that African Americans played here at Chautauqua, because they don't seem to be highlighted the way we would like. 2020, we had a program where we celebrated 100 years of women's suffrage, and the name Susan B. Anthony was tossed about all week long, of course. Haley Quinn Brown was a black suffragette. She was one of the most important black suffragettes in this country. She interacted with Susan B. Anthony. She was a CLSC graduate here at Chautauqua. And to me, that should be an integral part of Chautauqua history when it's told.
Thank you. We'll come back to more questions from the audience. What do you think the institution's expectations are of an African American or people of color presence at Chautauqua? Do they have expectations?
Well, that's a question, of course, you have to ask them directly. If you listen to what is being said, diversity and equity are cross-cutting initiatives across all of the strategies, and to me, you put your money where your mouth is, quite frankly, and I'm not sure that's exactly what is happening, but we do not work that closely with the institution. We're pleased that they have appointed a chief diversity officer. I was part of the interview team for him. I think he's doing a good job when he's not distracted by people here on the grounds who want to get rid of him. And that's a reality here. And as our speaker Stan Deaton said last year, whenever you can trace the entire history of this country, whenever there's progress, there's always reaction that take us backwards. And it's usually 3 steps forward, 2 steps back, and you make a little progress. I'm concerned that after George Floyd, we made 3 steps forward, and it looks like we're going 4 steps back right now.
What is your experience with black Jews from the point of view of inclusion?
Again, that's a question where I am not an expert. If someone's black, I know they're suffering already. I know my Jewish friends suffer. I don't know whether black Jews suffer doubly or whether you can tell the difference or not, but they certainly cannot hide. Let me say that.
Now we'll go to the audience. I see 2 hands up. One over here, Ben.
Thank you. One of your answers to diversity said it starts at the top. I have been subsidized for 6 years with a free gate pass. That is from the institution, based on age. Now, the institution should also subsidize young families in housing and in gate passes in some manner. That'll help diversity very much.
I cannot argue with that. As I talk to people about the future, a lot of people are hanging on to the historical model of dad dropping mom and the kids off here for the entire summer and dropping in every now and then. But that model is dead. It's dead economically, it's dead socially. The average gate pass is less than a week now. And so we need more robust and wider audiences.
Hi. Over here.
Over there.
Right here. Hi.
Hi.
I'm intrigued by your time
in Georgia, Atlanta, with the school systems as chancellor, I believe. Could you speak a little bit about the cheating scandal? And then secondarily, what is your hope for public education in this? I know that's a big question, but I'd love to hear you speak about it.
Yeah, I was what was called the accidental superintendent. The mayor, I was retiring as chancellor, and the mayor asked me to babysit the public school system for 3 months. And I felt that at that point in my career, I could fake it for 3 months. On the second day on the job, the governor's special investigator threw a 3-volume, 900-page tome on my desk detailing cheating in 75% of the middle and elementary schools in Atlanta. And for some reason, all of the candidates decided that they no longer had an interest in the job. And so I was sitting there on day 2, and on the one hand, I said, I didn't sign up for this. The other hand, I said, you're an engineer, you're trained to solve problems, solve it. And so my 3 months turned into 3 years, 7 days, 11 hours, and 42 minutes of absolute trench warfare. It was, I managed large global corporation. I managed a $2 billion university system. This was the hardest job I ever had in my life. It was, however, the most rewarding as well. I was able to really take the system apart and put it back together again, which very few superintendents have the opportunity to do that. I raised the standards and made sure that resources were allocated equitably, that I put in rules that said we don't teach anything anywhere unless it's taught everywhere in the system, so that I cannot mandate equal outcomes, but I can mandate equal opportunity. And I also raised the standards for teachers. I no longer wanted your choir mates to see student daughter as a teacher. I wanted high-performing students who could both read and write. You would be stunned to find functionally illiterate teachers in urban school systems. And so I was told that if you do that, we're going to have fewer applicants. And I told them, you're wrong. When people feel that you believe you're committed to excellence and higher standards, you will have more applicants. And that's what happened. And the system, the person, the young woman following me, was outstanding as well. But the problem is the average tenure of a public school superintendent is 2.8 years. And that is not enough time. And every decision you make is like a stone in your pocket. Pretty soon you have so many stones you can't stand up. Part of the, I think, blame is with elected school boards, because a lot of people just join the school board as a stepping stone to city council and they want to pontificate and do other nefarious things. And so it's a tough job, but you know, when you think about school systems, when we weren't getting along well, the races weren't getting along well, they said integrate the schools. When we weren't eating well, they said, you know, put the nutrition programs in the schools. And so the schools keep getting all the ills of society. People think the school system can solve them. But, you know, I had too many kids raising kids, and those are not the problems I could solve as superintendent. So there has to be a greater safety net in this country. We have to have better nutrition. We have to have better health care. I would go into schools in the morning, and the first thing I would do is I would talk to the cafeteria workers. who were all underpaid and undermotivated. And I'd say to them, I know you're underpaid, I'll do what I can to address the pay, but don't tell your friends and colleagues that you're a cafeteria worker. Tell them that you get kids ready to learn. Because if you can't feed them up, we can't teach them up. It's as simple as that.
Thank you. Is there a consistent view on how African Americans see the Israeli-Palestinian conflict? You weren't going to get away without that one.
Again, I got to throw out the caveat that I cannot speak for all African Americans. I can only speak for me.
Okay.
And I think I started that answer earlier by looking at my age group and saying our view of Israel. It's a very different view among younger people. Everybody talks about George Floyd. Does anybody remember Ferguson and what happened there? That's 10 years ago. 10 years ago, activists in Ferguson decided that the protest of the death of a young African American, and they were assisted in that protest by Palestinian activists. They were in direct contact with Palestinian activists. The activists were giving them instruction on how to deal with the police, how to deal with tear gas, to take your contact lens out if there's tear gas. And so there has been at least a 10-year growing relationship between young black activists and Palestinian activists. And so you might imagine how they feel about the war. And this is a challenge because the nuances of how Israeli-Palestinian citizens versus Palestinians from Gaza versus Palestinians from the West Bank, the nuances of the treatment are totally lost, totally ignored. And Israel is seen, rightly or wrongly, as an apartheid state. And this is a tough thing to imagine when you say, I am a people that we are aggrieved. I am Jewish. I am remembering the Holocaust. I am aggrieved as well. And then you're saying I'm an apartheid state. And that's a tough do. But young African Americans believe that to some extent. I certainly can't speak for all of them, only the ones that I've spoken with. And as I said, the lack of history means that that view is not tempered. It's not getting tempered on an ongoing basis. I don't know where this is going to go. I'll be frank, I'm not a Netanyahu fan. And I say that, again, with the love of Israel. And so, again, as I said, I don't know where this is going to go, but I think people need to stop fighting and try to understand each other and their concerns.
Questions from the audience?
The first Jewish property owners at Chautauqua were 1965. Prior to that, property, I think, was actually deeded no blacks and no Jews. Jews came here not because they were invited or wanted. The Jewish people wanted to be here. And they forged their own path here. Is there a reason that it should be different for the African American community? You're welcome here if you want to be here. And if you're not welcome here, you come here anyway because you want to be here. I think that's why the Jewish population here has gotten pretty large because the Jewish people have said this is a place where we want to be and we're going to make our way here. So I'm just asking, tell me differences between the Jewish experience at Chautauqua and the African American experience at Chautauqua.
Well, I think you started with the "you are welcome here," and I think most African Americans feel they're not welcome much of anywhere in this country, as I explained in my ongoing microaggressions on an ongoing basis. And it's all about critical mass as well. I think the first Jewish people here perhaps were not quite as happy as you are here because they too were isolated. And so it's a long process. We look at how did Martha's Vineyard in Cape Cod evolve as places where people of color want to go. And as I said before, it's because there are other people of color there and there are things there that they want to do. This is a long slog. You know, I'm fond of saying that, you know, the pioneers get the arrows, the settlers get the land. And so it is changing. I invite more people here, but I also find that I'm fighting battles with some of my Caucasian friends who don't want to come here because it is too white. And their children are now in much more diverse surroundings than they will be here. And that is a challenge I didn't have 10 years ago.
I have a kind of similar but opposite kind of question. You said the African American house is a place where people feel safe and they can be themselves. We became very friendly with a couple last summer who lived next door to us for a week, a black couple. They were in the theater program, and we saw them every day for hours, and we got really deep into very uncomfortable conversations. And one of the things they asked, which is a question I'm going to ask you, is, do you think if blacks come here that they can be themselves, that they can, does this community allow for differences? We are very white, and I'm not talking socioeconomic, I'm just talking culturally. And will people object to things like, these are examples they gave, the music being too loud, the food being too smelly, the kids running around later than we all go to bed early because we get up early and exercise. That, and they asked, and I said, I don't know. I would think we would be open to all of these fabric of differences, but I'm not sure if the people on the bus are laughing. I don't know. And I guess I'm putting that question to you.
Well, I wish I was an expert enough to answer all of that. I haven't heard any music louder than the Jonas Brothers. I can hear them all the way up in my house by the main gate. And so, you know, it's a matter of what people think and what they want to think. You know, I can have a bunch of kids making noise, and you can think, and if they look like me and maybe an associate or two, then you can say, oh, those kids are having a lot of fun. If they're different than me and they're making the same level of noise, you could start to say, oh, why are those people always acting like that? Why are they always so loud? And so, again, it gets to what you learned and then what you manifest. And as I tried to suggest to you, that the manifestation of microaggressions is wearing on people of color. And you sort of, you know, I don't have much left. I've chewed it off so many times. But again, it's something that you don't have to deal with when there are more people like you in place. But I think this is a special place. I suggest to my friends of color that they should come here. Some do. But the question is, how many come 2 and 3 times, and over and over? And I'm just starting to see that. Yeah.
Okay, I'll ask you a question then, going back towards the election. Somebody, I think it was Bob Shaw, stole my question, but is there a difference on how younger versus older African Americans perceive the 2024 election?
Again, that's, I have young people in my family, and before Biden stepped down, they were very disillusioned by saying, is this the best choice that America can give us? A bumbling old man versus a lying womanizer, a convicted felon? Is this the best this country could do? And so I had to, again, suggest to the younger people of my family to disregard the personalities and look at the policies. Look at the 2025 plan. Do you want to live under that? If so, vote for that party. If you don't want to live under that, vote for the other party. But do vote, and vote down at the local level. Your school board and your city council have more impact on your life than the president does. And yet we don't take those races as seriously as we should.
Thank you. As anti-Semitism is rising against Jews, do you feel that racism is also equally or more rising towards against African Americans or people of color?
I don't know whether it is or it isn't, but what I do know is that racists these days seemingly don't feel the need to wear a hood anymore. They can stand out in public. We have people now throughout this country protesting without their hoods in front of synagogues, with anti-Semitic signs and banners, and the same thing in African American communities. So I think racists in this country feel more empowered than they had in the past. And I don't really know where that's going to go. It's not a good sign from my perspective.
Thank you. Other questions? I finished my questions. Let's see if the audience has some more questions.
Over here on the left. All the way, 190 degrees to the left.
All the way.
All the way. All right, so my Brooklyn High School buddy Bob Schloss asked a question a few moments ago about what you thought the conversation would be if Kamala Harris becomes the nominee in the Democratic Party. I'm curious what your thoughts would be about what if she is not selected, and let's say it's Gretchen Whitmer and Wes Moore, Vice President, any one of those permutations. But what do you think the conversation would be if Kamala Harris, especially after being getting the endorsement of President Biden, does not get the nomination?
I think there is an assumption that black people as a group will be unhappy if she's not nominated. I'm not sure that's true. Recent polls on black women, for example, she didn't turn out quite as well as she had expected to be. And so to me, that's both a good and a bad thing. If we can look past color and look into capability, I'm all for that, as long as everyone else is all for that as well. But as I said earlier, the other party before Biden stepped down was talking really in hidden racist terms about Kamala, that if Biden were to be incapacitated while in his second term, you would have Kamala, and you don't want that. We had that with that other guy, Obama, whose I think scandals I can't quite remember right now because there weren't any.
The microphone's coming.
I don't need a mic. My question is simply this, it's more of an observation. I'm really happy to be sitting in the same row as Jane, and I'm very grateful to you, Jane, for telling the story of the bus, which was a horrifying story, and we all reacted with shock when we thought about that story. I thought, yes, it's shocking, but I've never been in the position where I should have spoken up and said, that is absolutely unacceptable to say such a thing. And I wonder, Olivia, you were talking. And I wonder if there's a way that somebody can help me find out and train myself to say what needs to be said in a situation like that. It could be something related to trauma. How can we train ourselves to do the right thing when we're so very rarely called upon, especially in this, very civil community?
That's a great observation. I think a lot of things could be resolved if people spoke up instead of saying, well, I don't act that way, so I'll just keep quiet about it. And so we talked often about the difference between being empathetic and being an advocate. And so we, of course, suggest advocacy, vigorous advocacy, and that means you speak up.
Other questions? Raise your hands. Somebody can come by.
My response when I'm in a situation like that, Joe, whether it's a one-to-one conversation or whatever it is, I just look at the person who said it and I say that is more harmful than it is humorous.
Men's get a lot of power.
Yep.
What would you say is former President Trump's greatest appeal to the black community, and isn't his position on immigration and they're taking your jobs, our jobs, or where's the appeal?
It is really difficult for me to define an appeal when I just define repulsion. It's sort of the same situation when I ask, how could any woman vote for him? But there are a lot of women that aren't going to vote for him. And I can't explain it. And there are theories. I used to ask, why is it that poor whites seemingly vote against their interests? And I read, and all of you should read Isabella Wilkinson's book on caste. And the answer becomes, because I need to have somebody below me. And I can't be at the bottom. So if I'm poor and white, I need somebody black below me. And so I will vote against expanded medical care, for example. And, the media doesn't really suggest that there are more poor white people than black people. But when I was growing up, which is a long time ago, if you said to me, I'm going to say the word poor, what do you see? And if you said that to me growing up, I saw a poor Appalachian woman with tattered clothes with kids hanging on her. Ronald Reagan changed all that. Now you see the welfare queen. And again, the data doesn't suggest that that's true. And so, again, we've do a lot of marketing in this country. And one hand in the Nixon administration said everybody is entitled to their own opinion, but only one set of facts. And now we're in a world of alternate facts, which makes it very hard to understand what motivates anybody these days.
How about it? Esther, hello. Erroll, just to follow up on your comments regarding African Americans coming here to Chautauqua, what programming would you suggest could attract more African Americans, and have you relayed that to the administration here?
Well, again, I'd like to think the programming we're doing to talk about what the world looks like through the eyes of the marginalized. But also, when you talk, I didn't want to say it depends all on entertainment, but I happen to be a jazz fan. Last season, Stacy Berger, Larry Thompson, and I underwrote 2 weekend jazz performances. Saturday night at the Athenaeum in the restaurant there, and then a Sunday morning jazz brunch. I got the results at the end of the season, and they were the liquor sales on those 2 Saturday nights were the highest 2 liquor sales of the season. The revenue for the Sunday jazz brunches, the 2 Sunday jazz brunches, was higher than any of the other brunches. Now, to me, that says you should be doing this. For some reason, they didn't notice. And so I'm back to ground zero again this year. And so the hotel is the largest money loser here in the system. And yet, I've shown them a way to make money, and I got to figure out why they're not taking it. And so, again, as I said, people want to come when there's programming. Also, they need to know more about this place. I'm not sure where the advertising, if any, takes place. I mean, a logic that says, I'm Chautauqua, my doors are open, you're welcome, come on down, that's not going to do it. It's not going to do it. I think you got to tell a tale and a story and get the story out there.
It's coming.
Erroll, you've often spoken about the importance of accurate history and understanding history accurately. Does the AAHH contribute recommendations to the CSC when they are selecting books each year?
We have not done that in the past. We do not have a huge staff. Olivia is here. She runs the summer program. She has a staff of 2, and she is overworked, to say the least. About mid-season, we're all totally exhausted, and so there are a lot of things we could do. Those are good ideas, but we just haven't gotten to that.
Any more questions? If not, I want to say a big thank you to Erroll Davis for coming, and we look forward to seeing you next week. Same place, same time. Thank you.